When we think of grief, we often just think of death and divorce, but there is so much more that can cause us to grieve in ways we really didn't think about. I spoke with Executive Director of the Chattanooga Center for Grief Recovery, Mike Waddle.
So many people deal with grief in different ways, but the most common forms of grief, when we think about this, we're thinking about death and divorce.
Right.
Those are probably some of the most common ones that you deal with.
There are really, truly over 40 different grief generating events that we experience in our lifetime, and they start early in childhood. It's not just death and divorce. We say that grief is the normal and natural reaction to a significant emotional loss of any kind. It can be abandonment, it can be abuse, it can be sexual molestation, it can be rejection. Anything that hurt you along the way, that left that scar that continues to affect you today, that's what we teach people to deal with. The grief recovery method that we teach was started over 40 years ago, and it's the only evidence-based grief recovery program in the world. It's a little different than some people think about when they think about grief. We many times think about a woman named Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who came up with what she called the stages of death and dying. That model was originally developed for terminal patients who get a diagnosis of 6 months or less to live, as to how they began to process that and get to a point of acceptance. Since that time, the psychological community has tried to apply that to any kind of grief, and it just doesn't work, because there are no normal stages of grief.
It's different for everyone, right?
It's different because everybody's different. You grieve how you were taught to grieve. You grieve what you observed along the way, how you observed loved ones in your family or caregivers, any authority figures in your life. By the time we're 3 years old, we've got 75% of the tools we're going to use to interpret the world around us. And part of that is how we deal with hurt and loss. And so there's a lot of different things that we are taught along the way. We call them myths. Don't feel bad. You know, you lose the ball game and the coach comes up and says, don't feel bad, we'll get them again next time. So you're supposed to just don't feel bad, automatically shove it. Yeah. Replace the loss. You know, if your dog dies, oh, that's okay, we'll get you a new dog. Well, that doesn't work, because replacing the dog doesn't replace the relationship you had with the old dog. The old dog doesn't. No, it's not. The old dog or the new dog doesn't bring you the bone when you come home from school. The new dog doesn't get up on your bed and lick your face to wake you up in the morning. You know, it's a totally different relationship, and we have to realize that. It's also why second marriages fail so often, because people replace the loss. They leave one relationship to jump into another relationship, and they've never dealt with all the hurts that were involved in that first relationship. So the great thing about the grief recovery method is it is not a program where people sit around in a group and just talk about it. And there is benefit to that, just being able to express. Instead, we teach them new tools that help them it's an action step program that help them move from the head to the heart and really truly deal with those hurts and losses once and for all. And once they learn those tools, then they've got those to apply to any situation that they have in their life. And it works, Latrice, whether the person is alive or whether they've passed. So, you know, there's a lot that we can help, and not just people, but maybe you lost a career. Maybe you lost faith. Maybe you lost safety. Maybe it's a loss of trust. Any of those losses or hurts we can help them deal with and address.